You know, something's been a real plus for me, a real heartwarming, cockles of the heartwarming kind of experience on YouTube the last few years has been Patreon. And I don't mean with regard to sort of personal financial remuneration through Patreon, but I mean the amount of support that I've seen for channels across the board on YouTube, and the fact that so many people and such a diverse group of people have been prepared to support such a diverse group of channels. A lot of the time, although channels will do sort of patron only material, it's not for that. It's because they are motivated to donate money that they don't actually have to donate to watch that material, which is quite a step for people to make. And something that concerns me, which is what I want to discuss in this video, is that I don't want to see anybody get their fingers burnt. I wouldn't want to see anybody get a bit of a nosebleed and a bad taste in their mouth at the end of their first month supporting a channel, right, because they didn't quite realize how it works. And there is the potential for that, and that is the point of this video. If the title of the video scaring anybody who already supports channels into thinking something like, oh my god, you know, is money being taken out of people's accounts wrongly or something, it's nothing to do with that. It's just that it seems to me, from some of the conversations that I've had, that people often go into Patreon not kind of understanding how the whole thing works. That actually applies to content creators. I've spoken to a few and advised them when they've set up their Patreon accounts, or even a couple of months in and they realise they don't quite understand how it works. But even more so for people who are donating the money, who are shelling their money out for channels that they enjoy. And so just let me give you a little bit of just a little explanation how it works to make sure that you don't get your fingers burnt if sometime in the future you end up in that category of seeing a channel and thinking, do you know what, I'm going to give them a little bit of support. So as a content creator, there are two ways that you can set your channel out to collect pledges. You can either do it on a per monthly basis or on a per video basis. Now, if it's a per monthly basis, then if you pledge $20 on somebody whose Patreon is set per month, then you will give them $20. And it doesn't matter whether they create 20 videos or whether they just sit on their arse all month and don't create a damn thing, you're going to give them $20. And that's the beauty of that system, but it's also the weakness in that there's no motivation to actually do anything. So it's a swings and roundabouts thing. But that isn't the model that most channels have gone down. Most channels have gone down the per video model, I think, for a number of reasons, but one thing that it does do is that it motivates you to create content, and perhaps it links your pledges into specific bits of content as well, so people can decide, I suppose, whether the pledges are worth it, whether the game is worth the candle in terms of pledging to this person on Patreon. Right, all so far, so good. But here's the danger, is that you need to be aware of how often people are triggering those pledges on Patreon, because it varies very, very wildly between channels. So I'm going to give you an example of two channels, and what I'm going to do is, so there's no sort of prejudice here, I'm selecting two channels that bat very much for the same side in this regard, Thunderfoots and Bearings. So if you look at Thunderfoot's channel, he makes quite a lot of videos each month, but if you look at his Patreon page, right, he doesn't set many of those to collect pledges, because this is how it works. If you put a video on YouTube, it doesn't automatically collect pledges on Patreon. You then have to go to your Patreon page, make a post on Patreon, link that piece of work in, and then you can decide whether you just want to display it to your patrons but not collect pledges, or click it to trigger a pledge. Now, what Thunderfoot does is, however many videos he makes each month, if you look back through the previous year, you will see that he only ever sets 1 or 2 videos in a month to collect pledges, okay? And that is something that you can actually see now, and that is what I would advise you to do. So if you were thinking of pledging to a channel, go onto their Patreon page, click on posts, and then you can refine it down in the left-hand column so that you just view posts that collect pledges, and then start to have a look in a typical month, right? How many pledged videos, how many videos are they creating and setting them to collect pledges? Because if you take at the other end of the scale a channel like Bearing, and I'm not suggesting that Bearing's doing anything wrong within the terms of Patreon, I'm not suggesting he's doing anything unethical or immoral, but the way he runs his Patreon is that whenever he makes a video, he puts it on Patreon and he sets it to collect pledges, such that he's made 13 videos. It's the 13th of November. He's made 13 videos this month, and all 13 of them are on Patreon and all collecting pledges. Right, last month there's about 20 videos on Patreon that are all collecting pledges. So this is why this information is very, very important, that you understand how this works. Because you could, let's say you've got a fair amount of money and you pledge to Thunderfoot $20 a video, you can be fairly sure that the most you're going to pay him in a month is $40, just as likely $20, right? So it's going to be $20 or $40 a month, something like that. But if you made the same pledge to Bearing's channel, October would have cost you $400. So you need to be aware of that. Now, one thing you can do when you set a pledge, you can also set a maximum. So what you could do if you wanted to pledge to Bearing, you could say, I want to pledge $4 a video to Bearing, but I'm going to set a maximum of $12 or $16 or $20, in which case your pledge would trigger for the first 3 in that month, or 4 in that month, or 5 in that month. But every time that he sets a video as pledged after that, you'd have gone over your limit, so you wouldn't be billed for those subsequent videos. So that is a very, very important tool to use, I think, if you want to pledge to channels that make a lot of pledged videos. The other thing that you can do is see how many pledge videos they make and kind of inversely scale the pledge. You may have decided to pledge $7 a video, see how many videos are made and think, well, no, actually, I'll scale it down to about $2, because then when you multiply it by the 20 pledged videos in a month, it'll give me the kind of figure that I was aiming to donate each month. So be aware of that, okay? Because for me, nothing is worse than the idea that somebody watches a channel and is motivated out of their own benevolence to support that channel and then gets stung because they didn't kind of understand how the system worked there. I wouldn't want to see that, and I don't think any content creator would particularly want to see that, but it can happen with this per video model if people aren't aware of it. So I thought it was worth just getting that information out there. I'm actually surprised more people don't do the kind of thing that I've done, which is I said right from the outset, doesn't matter how many videos I make in the month, the most I would ever set as pledged is 4. So that you know, like last month I made 12 videos, 4 will be pledged, and it could be less than 4 as it was over the summer holidays. There was one month, I think, where there was just 1, and another month where there was 2, right? But there will never, ever be more than 4. Surprised that more people don't do that, because it seemed a good idea to me. Maybe the fact that more people don't do it means it isn't quite such a good idea, but there you go. I wanted to get that information out there because, as I say, it's really heartwarming just looking around YouTube at how many people pledge. But I know that some people must be getting stung, not quite understanding the system, pledging to channels that said a lot of material as pledged, and at the end of the first month, people getting a little bit of a fucking nosebleed when Patreon comes and asks for that money. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.